Thanks for jumping into another podcast episode brought to you by Bad Tabletop Gaming. Your hosts are Bill, Armin, Andy, and Dan. If you are a new listener, welcome and thank you for your support. If you're a returning listener, welcome back and thank you for your support. Before we kick this new episode, we want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tony at Hammerhead Games, who has a variety of MDF and plastic cut gaming essentials from army trays to objectives and much, much more. And Matt at Pop Goes the Monkey, who has a large inventory of top-notch upgrade bits and specialized add-ons for the models in your collection. Links for both pages can be found in the descriptions of our videos. Lastly, if you like what we are doing, please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit us up in the comments, as we love all the feedback you give us to help us improve the channel and podcasts.
Hey everybody, it's Andy here from Bad Tabletop Gaming. Welcome to our latest podcast. Today I got with me Armin, and
Hey
we
guys.
also have James.
How's it going?
He's here with us. We're doing good. Start of the week here for us. How about yourself? You doing good?
Living the dream.
So James is joining us today, and we're going to be talking about the World Eaters. So, James, if you want to just maybe introduce yourself, kind of let us know where you've been, what you've been doing, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've taken the last few events off, but currently I'm working on my Blood Angels, and hopefully they'll see some action next LVO and Adepticon. But yeah, just taking it easy, working on some AOS stuff, some 40k stuff.
Nice.
But excited to be talking about 30k, my favorite game. So I'm looking forward to the chat.
Excellent. I know Armin and James have had some really good battles in tournaments in the past, so pretty excited for both of them to be here and chatting with us. So
I don't think there's
Yeah.
ever with James where I didn't sweat a shirt that needed to go change halfway through the game.
You're my arch nemesis, Armin. You're the only person to ever beat me in a tournament in a game. So you cost me last LVO, damn you, or the last one I went to. I didn't go to the last one, but
And I didn't even win
I know.
it, so that was really disappointing.
that's awesome. Yeah, some good fights for 30k, that's for sure. But let's pop this off, I guess. So yeah, World Eaters. So what drew you to play the Legion there, James?
Ooh, well, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but they were one of the only legions that were available when I started 30k back in the first book when it was released, and I couldn't live with myself if I played Emperor's Children. So World Eaters, I had dabbled with them in 40k. I love Corn, so they kind of were the natural choice, and it kind of started a on again, off again relationship over the past several years. But they've got a place close to my heart for sure.
Nice, yes, yeah, I hear you on that. The World Eaters were right up there with my Ultramarines. So,
Wasn't Angron one of the first ones to come out?
Angron was the first Primark
Yes.
to come out, and I remember sitting in our local games workshop here in Edmonton when that picture leaked, and just having a complete conniption about, oh my god, they're finally doing Primark, something they swore they were never gonna do, and yeah, I still remember how excited I was to this day.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's that excitement when the new stuff comes out, or even just that alone, first Primark to come out, Heresy's coming out. It'd be nice for that to come back, kind of thing, and just bam.
Yeah, that excitement, it was palpable. And, for the record, Angron still holds up. I know a lot of people, aren't, comment about how he's kind of lower in stature, but you got to keep in mind the guy's a hulking, convulsing, agonizing barbarian. So he's not exactly, standing up straight, but that model still holds its own.
He
Yeah,
does. Just wait when the rules for him as a demon prince come out, and then we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be cool. I
Well,
can't wait for his demon dreadlocks.
well, the way that they've done some of the models as of late, it'd be nice to see what they would do for that model, and
Totally.
they can do so much, right? So yeah, that'd be one to pick up for sure, even if I'm not playing them. So
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially like when you look at the, the plastic bloodthirster models,
oh
you can just like imagine how they're gonna do that crazy guy, right? Like it's gonna be, the black sword, the giant wings, the like I said, the dreadlocks that everyone
mhm.
loves in the art.
Yeah, oh for sure, for sure. So got another question for you here. Actually, we got a few, but
Oh.
so from the Legion Rite of Wars, out of the two that they have, what would you say is the one you use or your favorite one that you would use out of those two?
Just due to my play style, I'm very partial to Berserker Assault.
Mm-hmm.
One of the unique things about World Eaters is they don't rely on special units to be particularly strong. So, having a Rite of War with an extra troop tax isn't really a disadvantage. And, like I, we've all played with and against World Eaters, and knowing how much hatred has an effect in the game, World Eaters are not a legion that sits in their deployment zone. So almost overwhelmingly, you're not fighting in your deployment zone, maybe with the exception of holding back and guarding an objective. So having that hatred on your army is a deal breaker for sure.
Yeah, no, total truth on that one with like you're talking about not being in your own zone, like at all, really.
Yeah,
You
and
literally are going straight at the enemy with, usually tons of infantry, be it on the ground or coming down in pods, and it's just
and
oh, it's crazy.
it's very overwhelming, right? And that being said, World Eaters are one of the armies actually where I'm actually still think that the other Rite of War, the Crimson Path, it's still a good Rite of War, especially if you want to play a little bit more conservative and a little bit more defensive. When you're getting that +1 to feel no pain, especially with Galen Surlak and Inducti, you can actually make a very, very durable army. So it's not so much that one isn't good. It's just I love the Berserk Assault.
That's the one I use too when I used to play World
Yeah,
Leaders.
well, they're
Yeah,
tough, man. Like
yeah.
having that feel no pain and stuff, like it makes them tough. And
Uh,
giving independent characters it will not die, like that's solid too.
mhm. And I think with World Leaders, the Inducti were probably my favorite unit. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, hands down, right? And that's kind of what I mean when I was saying you don't need special units, because like really Inducti are still tactical marines, right?
hmm
Like they're still your base troop choice. It's just having Galen unlocks that kind of oh no, I'm losing 2 ballistic skill, but you're gaining a strength, which on World Eaters just stacks exponentially with chain axes.
hmm driving the nails in
That's
pretty
right.
much.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I guess we'll almost kind of answer that the third question, but we'll go through it here. Out of the Legion units, do you have a favorite out of them? Maybe
Yeah,
a couple.
yeah, I think again, World Eaters are a cool legion because they've got the ability to play very fluffily using just the generic units. The ability to get chain axes, I think, adds IO like a ton of flavor, right? Um, I personally like from a game lore perspective, I love the Rampagers. Just like the image of these crazy gladiators wielding, their cadre weapons, and there's like
Mm-hmm.
6 different weapons on the list, right? From a gameplay perspective, um, definitely I would lean towards Inducti. Don't get me wrong, Red Butchers are awesome. But as you guys know, I confess I'm a little bit of a power gamer, and when it comes to just the raw math, I feel that Terminators armed with chain fists um, are probably better in a competitive setting point for point than Red Butchers.
Yep.
But by no means am I saying Red Butchers aren't a good unit, because if you've got like 5 to 10 of them charging out of a Spartan, you're mulching stuff, right? You're just paying a heavy point cost for it.
Definitely. How about you, Armin? Terminators over Butchers?
Terminators over Butchers?
Yeah.
Well, the Butchers are good, but they die, right? So, and I feel that they're not as versatile, right? Like
Well,
they're like killing other Terminators because they're just going to massacre each other, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you're fighting another specialty unit or anything like that, they're just going to massacre each other. But then if you look at the versatility of regular Terminators, they can do the same thing as Butchers. I mean, not quite as well, because Butchers have the hatred and but
Well, yeah.
they also have power that can deal with other stuff, right? So, I mean, I really do like Butchers for the fluffiness, and they're really good at fighting other units, just as good as other Terminators. But I find that versatility-wise, that's all they
Yeah.
do, right? They don't really have an
And,
active armor, right?
and
I mean, the Chain Fist guy.
yeah, I think the Chain Fist Terminator is still point for point one of the especially in World Eaters, right? Because when you look at them, their buffs, their Legio buffs and their
Mhm.
Rite of War buffs, you're not just getting a Terminator. You're getting a Terminator that has hatred outside of his deployment zone and that has rage if you take, the blood madness, right? So, you know, compared to other Terminators, they are, in terms of combat, bar none, a league above. And like Armin said, right, like versatility counts for a lot in 30K, and you got to keep in mind what kind of units your opponents are throwing against you, right? So if you've got a Death Star on Death Star, a lot of units have strength 8 power fists and chain
Yeah,
fists,
that's right.
which are instant deathing your 2 wound Red Butchers and negating their feel no pain. So I think a lot of the points cost of Red Butchers comes from the fact that they've got to feel no pain and that they've got a 2 wounds. So yeah, against normal Marines, you're gonna get every point worth out of them. But if you're going up against Custodes with like Solarite gauntlets, good luck, right? They're gonna drop as easy as regular Terminator and Cataphracti.
For sure. For sure. Pretty cool unit, but again, yeah. They have their place, right?
Oh, totally.
So,
And,
yeah.
and like, oh, go ahead, Darman.
Well, I was just going to say, like, point-wise, like, if you look at them in points, like, they're not terrible,
No,
right? But they're not terribly overpriced either,
no,
right? But
no,
they're
they're good.
yeah. So, I mean, if you want to, I would never be like, oh, you're playing Red Butchers. You
Oh,
made a
they're
mistake.
definitely not that. I agree. I just think, if you're looking at it from a purely like, okay, I'm going to try to get the most out of bang for my buck out of every point, regular Terminators in conjunction with the World Eater rules probably eke out ahead for points economy and versatility.
yeah, fair enough. Good points. I know. I
But don't
know.
get me wrong,
I know.
I still had 10. I still had
I
10 in a Spartan for cool games.
See. I used to run 5 of them, and then same kind of thing as I switched over to just regular Terminators, and same kind of idea, right? So, but yeah,
Well, and I
no,
mean,
that's pretty cool.
that's the thing, versatility,
Yep.
right? But if we're playing games like, you're playing games like Zone, or Talus, then I think they're perfect because, the few dreadnoughts that you have, usually you'll have answers, or the guy with the chain fist can handle them, right? The sergeant,
Yeah.
you can give him 2 chain fists,
Yeah,
right?
the Devourer can get 2 chain fists, and
Right.
and like let's not forget too, right? Like as far as special Terminators go, they've got to be some of the coolest looking, like
Oh,
from their
yeah.
helms to their their dual chain or their dual power axes. Like they are just all around cool models.
Yeah, they are. I still like
Yeah.
them. But I have noticed though, like in these last podcasts that we've had, a lot of times these Legion specific units tend to come up and say, like an Armin's mentioned, they'll be really good in Zone Mortalis. It almost seems like that was kind of almost a theme with them, right? Like with the specific Legion armies, units and stuff. So it's
Yeah, and I think a lot of the Legion specific units are designed to be centerpiece units, right? Like almost like Death Stars, where you've got your Primark in there, you've got your your apothecaries and your chaplains. So they're buffed up a lot, right? And like let's be honest, you know we all play 30K because we love the story and the scope and the theme.
Yep.
And I think when you're playing a giant game or a Zone Mortalis game where there are certain limitations to the Force Org and what you can take, um, you know, the points economy and the points efficiency is less of a factor. Like when you're playing a 10,000 point mega battle, oh man, my kill to death ratio on points is a lot less important than it is if you're at like the top table of LVO, for example.
That's right.
I wouldn't know the top table of LVO, but I'll take your guys' word for it. But no, right on. That's awesome. Last question, and probably one of the most important questions. What is your favorite fluff from the Legion? Or about the Legion?
Ooh. You know, for me, I have to say it centers around, the Karn, Angron, and of course everyone's favorite captain of the flagship. What's her name? It's slipping my mind right now, tip of my tongue. But the non-Astartes chick who just whoops ass. I think
I don't know what her name is.
yeah, it's gonna bother me because like every
I'll
World
find
Eaters
it.
fan loves her. Um, but I think especially having read all of the Heresy books, and I think it's really easy to chalk up the World Eaters as a very one-dimensional legion, right? A bunch of crazy berserkers. But the story behind it, it's a really tragic story, right? Like Angron was a really tragic character. Like he was the only one out of all of his brothers that didn't conquer the world that he was on, didn't rule it. It seems like the Emperor singled him out to be a complete d-bag to, and it's a story of really of pain and suffering, right? Like Angron isn't angry so much as he's in pain, right? Like the nails are causing him this excruciating agony, and the only way to numb the pain is to commit acts of violence, right? So I think they did a really good job, especially in the later novels. Like if you've read the Angron um, Primark novel about kind of this fall from grace about the World Eaters, like when they were the Warhounds and how they fought in like the ancient Greek Phalanx style, like still a super brutal combat-oriented legion, but how it was all about control and just basically this degradation and de-evolution of these proud warriors into basically these crazy maniac, berserkers. So I don't know. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for an underdog, and Angron is definitely the quintessential definition of one.
Was it
Her name
is it
is
Lotara?
Lotara.
Yeah, Lotara. Yeah,
Yeah.
Taran. Taran. How do
Uh,
you pronounce it?
Flag captain of the 12th Legion
of the
Worship Conqueror? Does that
yeah
sound
the
about right?
Conqueror. Yeah, and just putting it in there when they eventually get around to Battlefleet Gothic Heresy
Oh,
edition or whatever it's going to be. Uh, I cannot wait to just, scream, fire the Ursus claws. I know that they just recently implemented them in Titanicus, the Ursus claws on Warhound Titans, for the Legio Audax, the World Eater, like accompanying Titan Legion, and they are just so cool and epitomize the World Eaters so much.
That's awesome. I know. Did did Jason do a startup on the Legion or the Legio for Titanicus? That
N- No, he's doing Volpa is his new Legion.
oh, okay, okay.
I think, Audax is going to be interesting in Titanicus, because they're one of the only legions that's exclusively Warhounds, so it's pretty limiting in terms of that game. But for cool factor, and I'm sure there are going to be people who figure out ways to make it work, but you know, you don't get much more world eatery than a bunch of Titans launching harpoons into, bigger Titans and dragging them into the ground.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, that's straight from the story. So
Yeah,
Oh, that's
it's
pretty cool.
I think it was what there was one of the earlier audiobooks that paired up Angron and Lorgar, and they fight a Dark Eldar ship, and the Dark Eldar are like weaving in and out, and they fire the Ursa's claws and just pull the ship in and board it. That was one of my favorite heresy moments. Is when they like, oh, poor Dark Eldar.
Yeah, you just remind me of I think
ever.
one of the memorable little scenes that they had. I think it's in Betrayer. Is when the I think it's the Warhound crew
Oh yeah.
is they see the enemy kind of thing, and I think Logar is down there, and I think the Warhound is like about to crush them, but then all
Yeah,
they
I supposed to
see is
step
these.
on
Spoiler
him.
alert, of course they see all the world leaders like cheering,
Yeah.
and they're like, "What's going on?" And there's like some kind of resistance to their Titan, and sure enough, it's it's
Angron,
Angron.
yeah. Holding single-handedly holding up a Warhound Titan's foot.
Yeah.
I love those kind of like moments that really highlight the the over the topness of the Primarchs. That's the same book where Lorgar and Gilliman are going at it, and Gilliman's like, oh man, Lorgar's upped his game. He's like, you know, uh, you know, holding his own, and then Angron comes running up, and Gilliman's just like, okay, well, maybe I could hold him off for a few seconds, but I'm not going to win this fight, and just books it. And there's another in one of the early books, another moment similar to that with Korax, right? When on Istavan, where Korax has got his power whip and is like whipping rhinos in half, and he just hears this primordial roar, and he thinks to himself, he's like, yeah, like I'm a Primarch, I'm like an undisputed warrior supreme, but Angron is a god of battle, and he just hoofs it out of there. Good world eater moments.
Yeah, probably the one Primarch I would not. Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to come across any Primarch,
Yeah,
but
any of them, yeah.
he would probably be the one. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good
And
fun, good fun.
I think that's one of the things that I love about 30K is when you see the fluff, reflected on the tabletop. And I think World Eaters are one of those legions that they they totally epitomize, and the rules totally epitomize what they are, right? Like the no going to ground, the rage, the hatred, Angron's rules, right? Even the way Angron's stat line is reflected, because he gets picked on a lot for being the one Primarch that has a 3-up save. He's got a slightly lower, survivability compared to some of the other Primarchs. But that is very indicative to the fluff. Besides the fact that he's a crazy berserker, he also was dying, right? He
Yeah,
was, coming close to the end. Now, that being said, for those people who cry that Angron needs a buff, he most certainly doesn't. Um, you know, he still is, in my opinion, one of the stronger Primarchs, especially if you play him right and are able to ramp up his attacks. He can go toe to toe with Russ and Horus when maxed out at attacks. So he's by no means a chump.
Yeah, for sure. I can agree
Yeah, I
with
like
that.
how I like how and we're going to talk about spoilers, but I like how he, as you mentioned, like he is dying, right? And who saves him, right? Like, yeah, you could say it was the Chaos Gods, but it wasn't, right? It was Magnus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Magnus,
in a roundabout way, yeah.
yeah, because Magnus is the one that decides to actually save his brother by, of course, helping him turn to
Oh, no, that was Lorgar.
Ogre. I thought it was
Yeah, it was
Magnus.
Lorgar. Yeah, it was Lorgar. Yeah, in that was in the whole Shadow Crusade.
Yeah, didn't Logar like jack him up pretty much?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was Lorgar.
Yeah, because the nails were killing him, right?
Yeah.
So
Maybe it was Logar, because Logar did help too. So maybe I'm just confusing that.
It's okay. We'll
Well-
both frantically go through all of our books, and it's okay. Even if it was Lorgar, Magnus de facto did it because without Magnus, Lorgar would be a chump.
Yeah.
I just
I mean, if
love
anybody
the
knows, let us know, because I actually am interested to know exactly which book, if I'm right or not.
I
throughout.
think it's
because I thought I remember reading it, but now I'm gonna have to go
it
back
might
and.
be in Betrayer. I think it might be in
Okay.
Betrayer at the end of the Betrayer. But yeah.
Yeah, we
Oh,
can
we're
check
definitely
that
good.
out after there. But
No,
I just
will.
love the whole relationship and story between the three there, Logar, Angron, and Gulliman. There's just
Oh, totally.
that little, it's like their own little kind of battle happening, right?
Well,
So
and one thing that I think is really kind of it was very subtly implemented into the fluff. And bear in mind for those who are listening, right? Like, yes, like it's been a long time since I think since I've read all of the books. So if I get something wrong, bear with me. But the planet Nucrecia or whatever it was, Angron's planet, actually was in Ultramar, right? So I think it kind of shows, Angron's contempt and disgust for, quote unquote, this perfect realm. And I think it shows, even at the height of, the grandeur of humanity when Ultramar was, the shining pillar, there were still some really shitty things going on and some shitty planets and, definitely things slipped through the cracks. And, Angron got a raw deal on the planet he landed on.
yeah, he had he really had like a bit of hate towards Gulliman because like it was Gulliman pretty much was brought up and had everything, and then
Gilliman was very much the the epitome, the cast of people that on Nucrecia basically exploited the gladiatorial games,
Mhm.
right?
which sounds like our history.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, Romans.
yeah, exactly, right. So yeah, again, like everything about Angron, when you look at it, out of all of the Primarchs that turned, I'd say he was the only one that had a legitimate reason to. And, there's a reason why he was the first one that joined Horus. And Horus, well, excluding Lorgar and his shenanigans, but, Horus knew that. He didn't need to convince Angron. The Emperor was just another tyrant to overthrow, right? To release the shackles from.
See, and I remember, I can't remember where I read it, but I remember it was like Angron didn't like either of them, like Horus
Yeah,
but he hated the Emperor more,
totally,
right?
right?
So,
Yeah, like, and especially by the end, like, going through the Solar War books, you can tell, like, Angron, he hates everybody, right? And I think that's the other thing, with the exception of maybe Kurz, Angron hates his legion the most, right? Like, he doesn't have that paternal instinct, right? When you're reading the Primark book for him, and that last, when the one that has the last World Eater librarian and Galen Serlak, and basically the forced implementation of the nails on the rest of the Legion. Like, Angron just goes off on these rages when the Legion is assembled and butchers his own guys. And this is way before the heresy, right? So, like, sucks to be a world eater.
Yeah, you want to be a
They're-
world leader on the line and not an officer.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, look at like when they discovered him, right? Every high ranking, world eater with until Karn went in got one shot, and Karn is another really cool character too, right? Like, I think when people think of world eaters, especially for those that are in 40k and not so much into 30k, Karn is the person that they think of, because Karn is the one who's most active in the story and in the current fluff, right? Like Angron comes out every few thousand years on a warpath and messes up Armageddon, but Karn and the Eightfold Path is really kind of the star of the World Eaters Legion.
Definitely. And he has such a nice model in 40k too. So.
Oh yeah, totally. And yeah, and he's just a cool character, right? Like, and all through 30k, he's a pretty reasonable guy, right? Like when you're reading the books, you really kind of empathize with him, that he's basically the one who's got to clean up the messes and hold the Legion together, which in my opinion kind of furthers the tragedy of the World Eaters, in that eventually he's the one that finally shatters the Legion into the warbands. It's the World Eaters just have had a rough luck since the very start, right?
Yeah, no, that is true, but we still love them. So.
Oh yeah, and from a game perspective, and Armin, feel free to jump in here, because I know that we've talked about it lots. I think when you're looking at Legion rules, World Eaters are still probably, excluding the Thousand Suns and whatnot, are still a top tier Legion. In terms of their Legion rules and whatnot, and as far as combat goes, I'd say that they're still the best Legion for pure combat.
I wouldn't disagree. That's for sure. Right? I've definitely seen them fight.
Yeah. Well, when you're playing Marines, you basically, it's more of a, not can you beat them, can you avoid them long enough to kill them, right? Like, and you look at some of the other legions, and don't get me wrong, like I love Blood Angels. They're a combat legion. Space Wolves, you could argue, are a combat legion. The combination of the rules and chain axes, it World Eaters are just so tough to compete with for a combat centric legion. And obviously it's changed a little bit with Custodes coming out and the demons. They're definitely giving the World Eaters a run for their money. But prior to those armies, like, you get charged by 20 inducti and you're looking at 100 attacks at strength 6 with re-rolling hits and re-rolling wound rolls of 1. Like, you're just evaporating. Like, I know, like, I've evaporated Sekhmet squads, I've evaporated 20-man demon units. Like, they're just a scary unit.
Yeah,
They are.
lots of attacks, that's for sure.
And they're dirt cheap too, right? They're tactical Marines.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Well, that was a good rundown on that one.
Yeah.
But I guess now we can start actually going over the Legion rules themselves. Armin, did you want to read them off?
The Legion rules?
Yeah.
But what do they got? Legion Astartes, of course, incarnate violence, so they may reroll to wound, rolls a 1, and any turn which you charge into combat, right? Unless it's, of course, a disorder charge. And then character models also get +1 weapon skill in fighting in a challenge, right? So it's like a mini version of hatred, right? Well,
Or
sorry,
cut closer to preferred enemy, right?
That's right.
With
that's right. Closer to me, but it's only to wound. But still, it makes a difference,
yeah.
right?
Well, especially if you're
there's-
strength 6, wounding most things on 2s anyways.
That's right. Yeah, with chain axe, right? And then with Bloodlust, after winning an assault, models with the special rule have to consolidate toward the nearest enemy unit that they're able to harm, right? So should a unit with this rule, so Bloodlust, lose a morale check after being defeated in combat, you roll a d6. On a 4+, you actually don't flee, so you count as passing your morale check, right? But then you get rage. They make it sound like it's a bad thing, but now this gets subject to rage for the rest of the battle. That's kind of an awesome extra rule with that, right?
I think one thing that's interesting to note about this rule is, Andy and I were talking about it before we went on. It's probably, with the exception of doing like a themed campaign, a rule that you'll never see in play, just because the alternate rule, Blood Madness, is just so much better, right? Getting the rage to start out with, and then of course not being able to make voluntary go to grounds or choose to fail morale tests, and the consolidate is the same as the bloodlust, but overall it's just in my opinion, like having rage all the time is just bananas. So again, unless you're playing a themed campaign, you're playing the Warhounds Legion, I don't see why you'd ever not take Blood Madness.
So you have a choice then.
Yeah. It's basically any battle after Istvan, you can choose to swap out Bloodlust for Blood Madness.
Okay.
Yeah, as a traitor force, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's the one I've used all the time.
The Blood Madness is a little bit more useful, I guess, unless you're playing Istvan campaign or something like that.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Right. Like if you're playing like the Fall of the World Eaters, or if you want to, like Andy said, I think there's a few still loyal World Eater characters. So definitely for those themed loyalists like Dabin Shar or whatever his name is, I can't remember. You definitely want to go Blood Madness.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Nice. And then we got their specific units that we'll look into after this. But they they also
let's not
have
forget war gear. I think it's important to note their war gear options because they've got a lot.
Talk about that.
I think we mentioned it a few times, but chain axes, right? Like what and the ability to swap out a chain axe for free for any model with a chain sword, is I think most legions would pay like multiple points for that ability. Yeah. Chain axe is giving you the AP4, which is a lot more prevalent against Solar Ox and demons. But what really like the +1 strength is just so big for Space Marines, right?
And honestly, when I think of crazed berserkers, I really don't think swords. I think axes.
Right? Yeah, like the chain axe is synonymous with the World Eaters and with let's be honest, Khorne.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just it's an awesome weapon. They look great. I wish they weren't so fragile on the models because it's a real pain in the butt to model them all.
And speaking of that, you actually used what were they? They were Sons of Horus Reaver?
Yeah.
Axes?
So I did two things. So I used the Sons of Horus Reaver axes because they were actually they're cool looking axes, gives you a bit of variety. But you're not having to pin vice drill a bunch of arms. And the second one I used was like one of the I think it was Cromlech that had some chain axes that fit the scale. But for anyone out there, they're probably one of the most um, you know resculpted things in the 30k world, just because they're such a pain to pin vice drill and whatnot.
Fair enough. And speaking
Um,
of, and then you got their other weapons too, right? The
yeah, they're gladiator weapons. I think in terms of flavor, like no legion gets this much love, right? Like, you get the meteor hammers, which are +2 strength, AP5, two-handed concussive, and +1 initiative. So, if you're an avid World Eaters fan, you've probably seen online, the conversions of those giant flails. Um, on the chains. That's the meteor hammer conversion, and it's a really cool, fun weapon. And out of all of them, I'd probably say that is my favorite. Um, because then you've got the super big chain axe, which is +1 strength, AP3, specialist weapon, shred and unwieldy. So definitely cool, definitely fluffy. But I'll honestly probably just put a power fist on a guy if I want, if I'm going to have an unwieldy weapon. The twin
If they had it like -1 initiative or something,
totally, yeah.
right?
If it was
Like, yeah,
-1
you might still,
initiative,
right? You strike before power fists, but
yeah,
after regular guy. Like that's kind of the big thing. And in this case, because I wanted to talk about this weapon, because I think it's awesome, but it just doesn't make sense. Because the unwieldy, as soon as you're striking at the same time as power fists,
yeah,
and you're much worse, why do you want this weapon?
yeah,
Right?
the
yeah,
excoriator chain axe.
yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, don't
Well,
get me wrong, if you can hide it in units, then maybe it's a little bit different, but make it like -1 or -2 initiative or whatever. You strike after a model with the chainsword, or whatever else, but you strike before a power fist. See, that's cool, right?
yeah, totally. And I think you'd see more use of it all, because I know a lot of people like to have these weapons on their like you can swap out characters, so like your unit champions and sergeants and stuff. And
Mhm.
you know again, most people take artificer armor on their unit champions, or a lot of them do. So like, it's kind of anticlimactic. You've got this beautiful model with this awesome chainsword, and you're just going to have someone tank it with a 2-up save indefinitely, right? For 5 turns of combat.
Yeah,
But
one thing I noticed kind of with all these fancy weapons, it just kind of sucks that people always end up going towards the same weapon, be it a Paragon blade or,
power fist, yeah.
or the new divining blade or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, like you have the auto include blade.
Yeah, pretty
um,
much.
yeah,
But
um,
this is
but yeah,
specific for one of the units, right? Mainly, so
yeah, and well, the nice thing, okay, so the one thing about these weapons to note, yes, they are for the Rampager squads, but any character can swap out any of their armaments, and it doesn't, or yeah, it doesn't specify independent characters. It actually says any independent character or character.
that's right.
So sergeants, can get this stuff, and I think, let's be honest. A lot of the things in 30k that are really cool, it isn't necessarily that they're not good, it's that there's a point barrier. And I think these weapons are a perfect example of that, because when you look, any one of these weapons is 15 points. You know, if it was 5 points, I think it would be a lot more tempting, to take these weapons, especially on Rampager squads. But when you're looking at 15 points, like that's pretty close to a power fist, if not a power fist, depending on what unit, right?
Yeah, very true.
Right.
Very true.
So I think the next one is the twin Phalax blades,
Yep.
which they're cool. Again, they look cool. they give you +1 attack, rending, specialist weapon. Uh, They kind of fit into the category of Charnable sabers for me, which is super iconic, super cool, but the game doesn't do them justice to how they're portrayed in the fluff, right? Like when you read about like the artisan crafted Chernobyl sabers or whatever, they make it sound like it's a power fencing blade on steroids that when wielded by Lucius or Saul Tarvitz or one of those swordsmen, can just absolutely go through power armor and all the joints. In actuality, not quite.
No, that's true.
And then the final one, is the barb hook lash, which is the fleshbane weapon. Now, I will say this: since the release of demons, and their plethora of toughness 6 to 9 creatures, and toughness 5 base creatures, you know, there's something that I might actually look at if you're doing like a themed campaign, or if you're talking with your opponent about what you're going to be playing beforehand, because yeah, if you're going up against an army with two demonic behemoths, a few barbed hook lashes would do you some good, wounding them on a 2-up. But otherwise, I don't know. They're, again, it's kind of a lackluster thing. What do you guys think?
I've used out of those weapons again the meteor hammer. Like
Yeah,
out of all of them,
yeah, definitely.
that's the one I was using, right?
Yeah,
So like game wise, never really used the rampagers that much.
yeah.
Um, but for modeling wise, like ideas just go through my head, right? Like
Oh, totally.
there's
Yeah.
things you can do. Like
Well, and like especially if you ever seen that show Spartacus,
yeah.
um, I know when I was watching that show, I kept jotting down ideas for world eaters, right? Everything from poses
hmm
to weapons. So if you're looking for some like really crazy over the top world eater conversion ideas, watch Spartacus, because you'll come out of that show with a long list of conversion ideas.
And that was one of the things. Like same thing for me, same idea because I love that kind of stuff too. But like even having a world eater with like an electro net with the trident or a spear or something, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because they're all
yeah,
gladiators, right? Like this is the squad.
totally.
This is the squad you would make each individual guy look like a gladiator of different sorts, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. And I know there's a fan made 30K kill team rule set floating around. Like this just screams that to me. Like totally, and even zone mortalis and stuff. Like if you're building a really kind of honed in force where you want to put that effort, world eaters are, I think, one of the best legions for that, in terms of diversity of weapons. And you can just they're when I was describing it to one of my friends who wasn't into 40K or 30K, I told them, the movie 300, times that by 100, and that's what world eaters are, right? Like just the gore, the violence, the craziness. That is to me the heart and soul of world eaters.
And I mean
for
the
sure.
like weapon itself, the flashbang one, is always good, right?
Yeah,
But as you said, James, ultimately, like point wise, I don't think it's worth it. But
yeah,
if you're going to spend the time, you're going to make your unit look good. These are the weapons you want to get,
Yeah.
right? Because they
totally.
look unreal,
Yeah,
right?
for
Yeah,
sure.
and like let's be honest, like we all know, like Forge World has said they're gonna redo the red books once all the legions are done. I think everyone is expecting, particularly the original legions, they're gonna be tweaks, right? I know they've tweaked a lot since Betrayer, or whatever the first book was, a long time ago. But these are those kind of things that I could really see getting a points change, hopefully.
Yeah, it'd be nice to
Yeah.
see when that happens, but
Yeah,
good
you never know. You
points.
can't. You're not going to hold your breath, but
No,
you
but
know, it's still it makes sense, right?
Yep.
I think nobody looks at that weapon list, especially like how many points is a divining blade? I like you have to buy the Paragon blade and then get the divining blade on top of it. You're paying like what?
it's like
Like 60,
60
65 points.
65, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. you know, personally, right now as it sits, I'd rather take a divining blade over 3, flesh hooks and barbs. But if
Yeah.
they were 5 points and suddenly it was, oh, I can take 12 of them, maybe that's something that I'd consider taking.
Yeah.
Right on, right on. So we got Red Wars. I know we briefly talked about them, but we can go into more detail what they are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, give her.
So yeah, we talked about it at the beginning, right? But Berserk Assault, the big thing is you gain hatred when outside of your own deployment zone, and you must always attempt to make sweeping advances if able. World Leaders are one of those armies that you're going to be wanting to move up, push out of your deployment zone. Like myself, when I played them, I played a very competitive drop army. So even if there was an objective in my side of the board, I drop down out of my deployment zone, kill my enemy, and then hoof it back to get my objective. You always got to make the attempt to make the sweeping advances if able. Not really a hindrance, I don't think. And you always get to re-roll. You always must re-roll failed pinning tests and re-roll run rules of 1. So again, that's to me are pluses. And the only limitations are you need an extra troop choice, which we've kind of already touched on. For world leaders, that isn't attacks because you could argue that their best unit is their troop choice. And you can't take more vehicles with the tank or flyer type than you have with infantry units in the detachment. And of course, you can only take a single consul, not a librarian, and you can't take any fortifications or allies. So overall, when you look at limitations versus benefits, this is one of excluding Guard of the Crimson King, this one stands out as one of the best pros with the least amount of drawbacks. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I agree, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, with the ability to just throw chain axes on all your tactical marines, it makes them that much tougher.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess I wanted to mention, like, when would you ever not want a sweeping advance?
Never. Pretty much.
With world leaders, never. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what
You
tactical reason right now where you would not?
Well,
yeah, the only time that you're not going to as a world leader is if you're not able to. So if you're cataphractic terminators, basically.
I guess maybe if it's like, let's say you charged in, and but you're still not in combat. So I don't know. When would you not want to like sweeping advance? Because realistically, whether you're sleeping advance or not, you're not in combat next turn. So it's not like you can choose to like.
The only example would be, I think, if you were in a very precarious position and say like a high or a low AP blast weapon, and you were like say on a corner and you don't want to. Well, even then, I guess you'd consolidate regardless towards the nearest
That's kind of what
enemy that you can hurt because you're right of war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was like, maybe you don't want to because then you're out of combat, but it still doesn't make sense because they automatically like you gotta consolidate either way. So whether you're in combat or not, like it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Rule size.
Yeah.
Rules aside, come on, they're world leaders. They're just gonna push forward anyways.
So actually, that can be a challenge to anyone who's listening who can think of a reason of why you wouldn't want a sweeping advance. Let us know.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Let us know. That's good.
There's no reason why anybody would ever not sweeping advance. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Unless you want to let the squad live, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think if there's any reason. Okay, so maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Oh, well, maybe no. Actually, no. No, hold on. I thought of it. If you're fighting demons of Khorne, and you don't want them to get killed in combat, and give them a victory point.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be the one. That would be the
Aren't their rules different though? Don't they
No, I
actually not
think.
run though?
if they get
Oh.
it's something
Ooh,
about if they
yeah.
get destroyed in combat, they get a point. If they destroy a unit in combat, they get a point.
Yeah, but
If
I know. But I think they're fearless, aren't they? Yeah.
probably,
Okay.
yeah.
There goes my momentary epiphany. Yeah.
Like,
So
I
the
like
challenge
it.
is still on. Think of a reason why.
Yeah, like, I have no idea. When would you ever choose not to sweeping advance, guys?
I
And let's be honest, right? That's one of the that's pretty much the only argument that you have that are for people have for Tartaros armor, right? Like, is the whole point of that you can sweeping advance, and that's the downside of cataphracti, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so interesting.
So if you don't want to sweep in advance, take Tartaros or take Cataphracti.
Yeah, exactly, right? So Red Butchers, there you go.
Yeah.
The second right, which again is still a good right, but I think a little bit less universally awesome, is the Crimson Path. So Forlorn Hope basically causes all infantry models with the Legion Astartes World Eaters have feel no pain while within the enemy's deployment zone. Models that already have feel no pain improve their roll by +1 to a maximum of 3. So this is where, if you're taking apothecaries or Galen Surlac, you could have a massive 20-man inducti squad with a 3-up feel no pain, because Surlac gives your unit a 4-up one. It also gives your characters, your independent characters, it will not die while in the enemy's deployment zone. And if they already have that rule, you're getting +1 to a maximum of 4. The limitations, obviously, missions with attrition or line breaker secondary objectives in play. The opposing player earns an additional victory point for each of these objectives the World Eater does not fulfill. Also, you can't include any immobile units or slow and purposeful. And of course, no fortifications or allies. So I know, Armin, how you feel about any right of war that or Legion rule that gives your opponents more victory points.
Yeah, I know that feeling too.
Because I play a
Right.
Legion that constantly has that ability to do. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, you're just getting double whammied. I think, again, when you superficially look at it, people see the +1 feel no pain and the it will not die and think like, holy man, that's pretty significant, and it is. But the downsides to this, with the the giving your opponents bonus objectives, and the fact that you only get it when in the enemy's deployment zone, those are pretty limiting factors. And one of the big things that I like about the other right of war is it just specifies not your deployment zone. So no man's land and the enemy's deployment zone give you the bonus, which is substantially more board than just your enemy's deployment zone, because that's dependent on the mission, the scenario. What if you're playing a foot slogging army and you're not drop potting? Um, you know, you could be not getting these bonuses for a significant amount of the game, which I'm not a fan of. But if you build a list, with nothing but apothecaries, inducti, Galen Surlac, and you are only where you need to be, yeah, it creates a pretty tough army for sure. Especially if your opponent doesn't field a lot of instant death.
Yeah, you can definitely build like your army towards this Rite of War. Like both Rite of Wars kind of, you can see how you're going to build your army with them, right?
Totally. I just think when you're comparing it, personally, as a player, I play World Eaters to kill things. So hatred is more up my alley versus feel no pain. But it definitely, a lot. World Eaters can't complain because there's a lot of legions out there that their secondary rights of war are just utter trash and are not playable, or are just so leagues behind their main one. I do think this one, if you're a savvy general and if you build the right kind of list, this can still be a pretty formidable one.
Nice. Yeah, no, good words. If you guys have thoughts, let us know.
Yeah.
Write down in the comments. What Red War do you guys use?
Yeah, and that's the joy of this game, right? Is the legions are such massive forces that you can play any legion and justify it, right? Heck, Games Workshop is justifying White Scar's dreadnoughts by saying that they were Terran Marines interred in them. So if they can justify that, you can justify your World Eaters sticking them in their deployment zone or taking gun batteries.
Fair enough.
That every book that they talk about White Scars, they specifically talk about how they're not dreadnoughts, like so much, and then all of a sudden they have them. But yeah, I guess Terran Marines are okay with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, the story is an ever evolving thing, right? You remember the days when Black Templars didn't use astropaths to communicate because all psychers were abhorrent, and over the years it slowly changed to not be that. And now oh yeah, my Black Templars can ally with Grey Knights or librarians. It's an evolving process.
yeah. The canon fluff changes all the time.
Well, some things make sense, some things don't. Them not being able to communicate doesn't actually make sense.
Hey, no, they explained it away by using Dark Age technology communication relays that they just conveniently had on all of their ships and all the planet war zones they were on.
And nobody else has that? Like, why not just that?
Yeah.
Like, the Emperor would have used it. Isn't he that what he was literally trying to do instead of away from astropaths?
Yeah, get away from navigators, get away from astropaths.
Yeah. That's a good one.
But no, overall, I think the rights of wars are pretty solid for World Eaters. So, did you guys want to take a quick look at the units now?
Yeah, go over the units exactly.
So
we've kind of talked butchers.
Yeah, the Red Butchers we've already kind of talked about. Rampager squads are a elite / fast attack choice. As we mentioned, they can take the special Qadir weapons. Forgive my pronunciation. They're chosen warriors, so they can all declare and accept challenges. Feel no pain 6 up. They've got scout. They can be equipped with jump packs. Again, super fluffy, super cool unit. Just not particularly points economical. And when you're comparing them to other things in the army, them versus a tactical marine, they're double the points of a tactical marine. It costs 20 points to add a rampager. And you're literally only getting one more attack and scout and a feel no pain of 6 up. So, fluffy unit, yes. Cool unit on the battlefield in terms of looks, absolutely. You can make them pretty formidable if you gave them all special weapons. but for them, you're looking at 10 points for each one of their gladiator weapons on top of the 20 points a model. And if you give them jump packs, you're looking at like a 40-point model there. So you might as well just get a Terminator or 4 Inducti.
One thing do notice about this unit, I don't know if there's any other unit that has it, but elite and fast attack.
Yeah, so there's a I think there's a few in at least one in another legion, but it is versatile for building lists, especially if you're doing a campaign that limits that, or playing a scenario that does that. Um, you know, especially for if you're looking to fill up the slots, like if you're running a say a Terminator heavy army and you're out of elite slots and you wanted to run some of these guys, you can put them in a fast slot, and it kind of makes sense. They've got scout, so they're supposed to be kind of like the vanguard, unleash the hounds kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can honestly say that I've played them in fun games. I've never played them in a tournament, just because in Inducti everything they can do, Inducti do better.
Yeah, different setting, right? Different
Yeah,
tournament fun play.
yeah,
Fluff.
exactly,
Yeah,
right.
definitely.
But yeah, other than that, I think. Do you want to cover the characters or go straight to Angron?
No, go through the characters because you have Karn,
Yeah,
Dar,
Karn.
and also Surlak.
Yep.
Can't forget
Yeah.
about him.
So, Karn, awesome character. As far as he's got everything you could want in that kind of top tier Space Marine character, with the exception of Eternal Warrior. But if they're not giving it to Abaddon.
Oh, you cut out there, James.
Yeah, I think he means to say if you're not giving it to Abaddon, you're not going to give it to everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think Sigismund is the only Space Marine character that has it. Hey, like for first captain level, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at his stat line, he's typical Space Marine, Praetor with a higher weapon skill though.
Yep.
Where you're really getting some good use out of him is obviously he stacks really well with the Legion rules. So the fact that he's got 4 attacks with rage, with hatred, +1 weapon skill in a challenge, so your weapon skill 8. So you're pretty much hitting even some Primarks on 3s, and re-rolling. He's a pain train, especially if you give him Gorechild, right? So Gorechild, giving him Armor Bane, Murderous Strike, +1 Strength, AP2. He is probably as top tier a Space Marine character as you can get in combat. With the exception of everybody's favorite first captain, Sigismund, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And he has Rampage. So this guy can literally, if he's outnumbered, get on the charge 9 attacks.
Yep.
So you're cleaving units.
Then, and the other thing too with him is like if you're taking Gorechild, then he's more than likely he's your warlord, right?
Yeah. That's the only drawback, right? Is that if you're taking Angron, you can't get Gorechild, which basically gives him a AP3 rending weapon, the Cutter. So not bad. It's still got rending, and with 9 attacks, you're still getting a few reliable rends. But definitely Gorechild gives him another order of magnitude in terms of power. And if he's your warlord, you're getting +1 to seize, +1 to determine which side gets the first turn, and +1 to seize.
Yeah.
So,
and that's really good. Like for his price point.
Oh yeah, 170 points.
Amazing.
Yeah, he'll go toe to toe and beat pretty much every character short of Primarch's Sigismund and a beefed up Tribune, right, of the Custodes. So and with Gorechild getting Murderous Strike, you get that lucky 6 to wound, and you're instant deathing that pain in the ass custodian character.
Yeah.
So overall, Karn, I think, is an awesome character, great for fun games and viable in competitive games, hands down. Shabran Dar, that was his name. I think I mixed up some of the letters there. He's the loyalist. So he's yeah, I know. Hey, what the hell? What the heck? He's a cool character. If you've read a bit of the fluff about him, he's a Centurion, so Centurion stat line, 2 wounds. You can give him a jump pack. He's got just power armor and a mastercrafted chain axe. He's got rage, hatred, traitor, space marines, and feel no pain 6-up. So for 115 points, he's better than like a bare bones Centurion. He's got Headhunter, so when he's in a challenge, you're gonna get Rend, so that makes it a little bit better. So, but again, he's forcing you to take a loyalist force.
Yeah.
Which means no blood madness, and it's just for me he's a hard pass for that alone, but definitely cool if you're doing a campaign.
To me, he almost seems like he should have just been like a jacked up sergeant. Really.
Yeah, that's what he feels like, and I think he falls into that category in 30K of the characters they just shoehorn in.
Yeah.
For shits and giggles, like, oh, we're low on our world leader character quota. Here's Centurion Shabran Dar. Especially when there's a lot of other characters in the world eaters who are fan favorites, right?
No, that's true. That's true.
But let's go to my favorite character, probably in all of 30K, and one of the most game-changing, army-changing characters out of any legion, which is Surlak.
Yeah.
And I don't have my black book with him in front of me. Because he's only in, I think, what, book 4, book 5.
Let me take a look here.
Yeah, if you guys have the points, I'll start covering the rest of them because I know it off by heart. But he's basically a souped up apothecary. He's got a power axe. He gives an improved feel no pain to your units of 4+. But the game changing mechanic for him is the fact that what he does is unlock inducti. So, as we mentioned earlier, inducti are actually not a special unit. They are just world leaders, tactical marines that sacrifice 2 ballistic skill for a strength, and they lose scoring. But when you take that extra strength, take chain axes for another strength, you're looking at strength 6. If you take the Rite of War, hatred, they've got rage as well if you take blood madness. So you're looking at, 1 attack for tactical marine, 2 attacks for the close combat weapon and bolt pistol, plus 2 attacks for rage. So 4 attacks on the charge. And then in that book, Galen Surlak, along with any World Leader's Apothecary, can opt to crank the nails on any unit, not just inducti, where basically you get an extra attack that round of combat, but at the end of combat you roll a dice for each model, and on a 1 they die. But when you think about it, basically a 10-point tactical marine, if you're running a max size squad, you're rocking 5 strength 6 attacks at AP4 re-rolling hits on the charge, re-rolling wound rolls of 1 on the charge, and what do you sacrifice for it? 2 ballistic skill and the ability to score. And as anyone who's played a lot of games with me can attest, scoring don't matter if you table your opponent. And this is the unit that'll table opponents. So
The only
that's my
downside is, you sacrifice a sixth of your unit, right?
yeah, and
Every time.
that's if you crank the nails, right? But let's be honest, most of the games that I've played, most of the games where you're taking a big man in duck dice squad, you honestly don't crank the nails, because if you're getting that charge off, for those of you that are into Math Hammer, you know, the odds of a normal unit in Heresy that's in power armor surviving that, even in artificer armor, um, you know, without the nails, 20 of them gives you 80 attacks. So it's often cranking the nails is overkill. I think the only time I've cranked the nails is when I'm fighting demon players, and I'm charging 20 Nurgle demons that are inside their ridiculous bubble. When I'm charging a 10-man unit of Sekhmet or a Custodes squad, and in which case, a lot of units that they're fighting, like a lot of Death Star units, are Power Fist or Chain Fist. So if you can kill them before they can swing, oh no, you're losing 1/6 of the unit, which is still less than you'd lose if 10 Sekhmet were dropping Power Fists on your face.
Yeah, you pretty much want to try to do max damage on the initial.
Yeah, exactly, right. But yeah, definitely, don't get me wrong. That rule in particular has burned me with characters. Because under Galen Serlac's rules, it says, hey, any apothecary in any World Eater infantry unit can crank the nails, and any unit that has the Legio right the Legio Astartes World Eaters can get it. So yeah, I'm not too proud to admit that I may or may not have lost Karn a few games to the nails. But we're World Eaters. That's the price we pay.
Exactly.
All right.
Just like in the stories, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. Well, how many times did Karn die? Whether it was the nails or getting impaled on a rhino, or
yeah, I was just gonna say that,
or Land Raider, whatever it was.
that was a brutal one.
Yeah, that was Loken, right? Loken just like threw him up and he gets impaled on the dozer blades or something.
Yeah. It's like, damn.
Yeah, so it's kind of a recurring theme. Hey, the World Eaters get a raw deal. But let's go to Angron.
The big man himself. Yeah.
Yeah. So tied with Rust and Sanguinius for the highest weapon skill in the game at 9, ballistic skill 5, above average strength of 7, average toughness of 6, below average wounds. I believe Lorgar and Angron are the only Primarchs that have 5 wounds. Above average initiative of 7, above average attacks of 6, leadership 10, obviously, and then of course the dreaded 3-up save. The unfortunate distinction amongst Primarchs of being the only one, excluding Istvan Korax. So when you look at his rules, he's got the Red Sands, which is obviously, when we were talking about earlier, his ability to, really rock out in combat and basically issue
challenges.
as many challenges as he likes. It's pretty big, right? Especially if you're going against Custodes players or missions that reward challenges, or a game that stands out in my mind is I was playing Bill's Space Wolves once, right? And sometimes you can eat a challenge and hide your fragile character in the back. Well, not with Angron. He'll just issue 6 challenges. So that's pretty big. He's got Sire of the World Eaters, so gives him Furious Charge, so bumps his strength up to an 8 on the charge, with before you include his weapons. Gives him a 6-up Feel No Pain, which has been FAQ'd, or sorry, errata to a 5-up Feel No Pain.
Yeah.
So big deal, right? That is essentially a 16.6% buff to his survivability. And then, of course, all world eaters within 12 of him are fearless. So overall, not the most game-changing Sire rule, but definitely not a bad one. He's gonna make your line unwavering in the 12-inch fearless bubble. He's gonna stick around a little bit more with his improved Feel No Pain. So not too bad. When you look at his war gear, Armor of Mars, so that's the 3-up save and a 4-up invuln. Now, I personally think, and when you play a lot of games with world leaders, you often have your Primarchs in their Death Stars, right? So, to be honest, I'm not so heartbroken about the 3-up save because often he's with a squad in 2-up Terminator armor, so he can look out it off, right? It's not. I personally think it's game changing. Now, where you get into risky territory is, like I'm infamous for breaking my Angron off and sending him off on little side missions. So if you've got a smart opponent, it doesn't feel good to get Fury of the Legion as Angron by himself. But what are your guys' thoughts on his infamous 3-up save?
It's messed me over a couple times. But in the squad, like you said, exactly how you said. In the squad he's cool. When he's out and alone, like plasma support squad.
Yeah, but again, right? A plasma support squad.
Yeah,
ahead,
I think it's a shame. Well, I think it's a shame because it doesn't quite make sense to me, right? Like, yeah, when the Emperor found him, his armor probably wasn't as good. And I don't know, maybe Angron would just like decide to keep his armor or whatever because he's that kind of sentimental guy.
It's his same armor, right?
It is the same armor. So yeah,
from the Red Sands or whatever the pits.
It's been buffed. Like like they talk about that. I think in one of the novels where it's the same armor. It probably would have given him a 6-up save, prior to the Mechanicum working it. But yeah, it definitely, in conjunction with him having the lowest wounds of the Primarchs, definitely makes him a little bit more glass cannon-y.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
His other weapons, Gorefather, Gorechild, the famous axes, +1 strength, AP2, Armor Bane, Murderous Strike. One thing I forgot to cover is under his rules, right? So he's got the Primark rules. He has Hatred Everything. So
I love that
not
part.
only does does this guy have weapon skill 9, so he's hitting almost everything on 3s. He's re-rolling those. And if he's charging in conjunction with Furious Charge, he's hitting at strength 9 with 7 attacks on the charge. So he and unlike some other Primarchs that have high strength attacks, he's hitting at initiative 7. So Angron to this day, he's up there with Sanguinius in terms of ability to charge and do damage, right? Sanguinius and Russ, in terms of volume of attack, strength of attack. He can knock out everything from Titans to units to other Primarchs. So he makes up for his fragility for sure, I think. And that's before you're including the Butcher's Nails, which is for every character infantry unit that he wipes out or destroys in close combat, he gets +1 attack up to a maximum of 10 attacks. So you
Yeah,
know,
because that's unit and like characters as well, right?
it's
Independent
independent characters.
Yes.
So unfortunately you can't be like, hey, Custodes, I just wiped out your 5-man squad and you're all characters. But you know, I think when you're playing 30K, you do tend to see still Death Stars with, chaplains, apothecaries, Primarchs in a Spartan. His ability to challenge out the independent characters and kill them and then potentially kill the unit, and the fact that he's striking at a higher initiative, so he's going to get the killing blows more often on units. A 10 attack Angron can go toe to toe with Horus, with Russ, with Magnus buffed up, and all at 400 points. So that's the other thing, right? He's not as expensive as the other quote unquote top tier Primarchs. I definitely
he's kind
think
of on
he's good.
par with the first book, right? Like
Yeah.
you got Fulgrim, who's cheaper, right? You've got Angron, who's cheaper. You've got Horus, that's very expensive, but of course superior to a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
feel like he's well costed for what he is.
Totally.
And like you said, like he doesn't give massive buffs to the army, but he's a good standalone character and it fits the army so well too.
Totally. And when we look at all the stuff we've already talked about, the World Eaters as an army are one of the most buffed up armies already with their special, like, how else could he buff them? They've already got hatred, they've already got rampage, I guess you could give them preferred enemy, but they've already got hatred and they've already got the reroll ones to wound on charge, so it would be redundant. And if if you made him too much of a buff to the army, then he strays into the territory of okay, well, this guy's just way too good, right? So yeah, I think for being a book one Primarch, I think he holds his own, and really, it'll be interesting to see. The Lion is the only combat Primarch, well, the only Primarch left, but really, Russ, Horus, Angron, the Lion probably, and buffed up Magnus or buffed up Lorgar. The rest, Angron is, especially with the bonus attacks, he'll just mow through. So, I'm an Angron fan. I don't care what anyone says. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So, any other things you guys think are worth noting about the World Eaters?
I do have
I
to.
just really like their fluff,
What's that?
Go ahead.
right? I just really like their fluff, and I know we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, they're just a cool legion.
And they play exactly like you think you should play them.
Yeah.
Right? So kind of nice. It's kind of nice to see a legion that's
and we've talked a lot about, I think, the fluff and the campaigns, the cool factor, but one thing in competitive Heresy, Armin, and I know we've talked about it, is the power creep that is indicative of all Games Workshop products, right? Where it really hit situation critical with the Thousand Suns and Custodes. And well, actually, I'd say it probably started ramping up with Mechanicum even before that. And then, Custodes, Thousand Suns, and then, the demons of the, Maelstrom. World Eaters are one of the few exceptions to the rule where I really think that they're still a tier 2 competitive army, and can be tier 1. I know that we had the on the one battle report in which you defeated me soundly with my competitive World Eater list, but that same list won a few fairly competitive tournaments. And so I think that really is a testament to the longevity of this army, and the fact that it's a book one army still able to beat and win tournaments even with all the ridiculous power creep that we've seen, right? Like I've beat Magnus Death Stars in tournaments with my World Eaters. So, I really hope, you know, when you look at some of the other legions from book one, that went in the other direction, cough cough Emperor's Children, um, you know, World Eaters are sitting in a really good spot, and have aged like fine wine, in my opinion.
Yeah, because the tournament you took them to, was it in Chicago?
No, that one I took them to Onslaught, which is a pretty big one out here in Western Canada, and in Edmonton.
Yep.
And there was one other one I can't remember, but we play in a pretty competitive meta out here. We've got several folks who like myself, you guys, like we a lot of us have placed or have won GTs all over the States and Canada. So like we're playing in a pretty vicious meta for competitive heresy, and they hold their own here.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
right.
for sure.
It's been a while, I think, since we have.
Yeah.
But well, with COVID and everything, it's been a while since we
totally.
So, no, and I definitely remember that game specifically, James, too, with my Alpha Legion. And Alpha Legion stand on their own as well, and I found that it came down to a couple of dice rolls in the end, and I think we even like messed up some rules too. So
yeah, like you always do, right?
Oh, for sure.
I kind of was hoping for a rematch, but that's not going to happen anytime soon.
No, unfortunately not. But but I think that game, also, if you guys haven't seen it either, right? It was one of your competitive corner YouTube battle reports. It's a really good indication of how a competitive World Eater list can play, and also how to beat it, right? Because you spent the entire game avoiding it, right? You play. Yeah, right. Like, and I, like you said earlier, our games are always a lot of fun, and if you ever want to see kind of,
they don't always translate into best battle reports.
No,
right? Because
no,
a lot of times competitive games tend to be less
fun to watch. Yeah.
They tend to be, you're not playing like true with your World Eaters. Yeah, you're playing aggressively, right?
Yeah.
But as your opponent, I don't want to play aggressively because it doesn't make sense. It's like throwing myself against a grinder. Like, it's ridiculous how good they were, right? So I just have to basically stay out of combat and shoot you. And if you had gotten in, it would have been a very different story, right? I think we had a couple combats in that game.
Yeah, we had a couple, my backwards charging Leviathan.
That's right. Yeah.
I remember that. I remember that now.
I remember people like that.
Commented on that. Yeah.
People didn't like that, but hey, if you here's the way I look at it. We were having a competitive game, and you don't win Adepticon, you don't win LVO by not taking advantage of all the rules, within reason, of course.
Fair enough. Right. Fair enough.
It was funny, and I remember you and I sitting down and be like, "Is this possible? Like, can we actually?" but you know what, though, James? Like, to be honest, that speaks of a failure in a rule.
Totally.
Because failure in the rule is the inability to consolidate or turn yourself even after combat with a vehicle, irrelevant of what you are. That doesn't make sense, right? So, like, if they had fixed that, even if against vehicles maybe you only consolidated 1 inch, right? That would fix that issue, because then you wouldn't have to do a stupid backward charge in order to make sure that you don't get shot in the back.
In the back.
My entire
Totally.
So that's kind of, I feel like the issue isn't necessarily that we looked at a rule and we're like, oh, the reason that we even had to look at it kind of sucks, because it doesn't make sense. Like I get why they don't want people consolidating against vehicles, and but even if 1 inch would let you reorganize your unit, especially with like blast templates, especially with all that, it's just, and in 7th or 7.5 or 30K, whatever you want to call it, like it hurts, right? You charge a dreadnought and then you're stuck there afterwards, and then you're going to
and
get
you're
bombarded
clumped.
by flat and you're going to twice,
Yeah,
right?
you're
It just
clumped.
doesn't make sense, right? Or a dreadnought charges another dreadnought and then can't consolidate afterwards. Like, it really doesn't make, right? So, like, I get what the attempt at a rule was, right? But even if you kind of fix that a little bit, then I think you and I would never have to look at that, right?
I think they should have just kept it straight across, straight across the board with consolidation, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's what they should have done. Just kept it straight.
Well, like that, and then it was changed back.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Like,
I think I think that happens, right? Especially in battle reports, where you basically only one time to film it. Like, when you're playing a game like this, a lot of us have been playing multiple editions, multiple games, and like myself, right? Like, I've played upwards of 400 2,500 point games in 30K, right? Like, I play a lot. But you make mistakes even in tournaments. Stuff happens, and I think there's this expectation, when you're doing a battle report, or if you're a top tournament player, that you're infallible. And it's just, some of the games that I've had some of the biggest blunders with are at the top table of these grand tournaments, just because it all blends together. So it's it'll always happen in wargaming, no matter what.
Well, and definitely, like, you look at, let's pick LVO for example. You look at those big tournaments, and they have, the top table will have a judge, they have a rules person, they have like announcers, they have multiple people watching it, right?
Yeah.
So if something like that does happen, they can fix it right then and there, right? Where especially when we're filming that, like, and in normal games that you play, you'd be surprised, you make mistakes, but you don't even notice. When you're watching it afterwards, you're like, oh, that was a mistake. That shouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember specifically the game with me and Andy, actually, and I remember like shooting at his dreadnought, and I glanced, and I glanced, I picked up my dice, and I'm like, okay, I glanced you, and I rolled the damage chart.
You rolled the result,
yeah.
Like, oh yeah, this is what happens. And I remember thinking about it afterwards. I was like, I literally said, I did the math right. I said glance. You heard me. You agreed with me, and I rolled. And we both like decided that the result applies. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Sometimes the game.
Let's be honest. If we wanted to play a game that was a little bit easier to remember the rules, we'd only play Age of Sigmar, and or only play 40K. No offense to the 40K only players out there, but 30K is you're a 300-page rule book. So it's definitely an order of magnitude a complication beyond 40K and Age of Sigmar, which is why a lot of us still enjoy the old format. And I say that as someone who plays AOS and 40K. They're just different, right? And there are some days where I can play Age of Sigmar, and I would not be able to play a game of 30K because I don't have the brain power to remember all the rules.
Yeah, no, been there for sure. Multiple games, just. Yeah, no, not today.
Yeah. You just hope that those aren't the days that you've flown out, to a tournament somewhere across the continent.
Oh, yeah.
All of the times where we've drank the night before, and we're going out to the game. So.
Yeah. But yeah,
and he hasn't had his breakfast yet. He's going to make mistakes.
I think overall, when you look at World Leaders holistically, they're a great army. They're a great army on the tabletop. They're a great army from the backstory. They're a great army from a painting perspective, because although they are white and blue, you can go so over the top with the gore and the weathering. Like, they are just one of those armies that I would recommend to people who are interested in any and all facets of the hobby, right? Because they can do everything. And fundamentally, I think, to jump back to the very beginning, that's what appeals to me about the World Eaters, because I'm one of those guys. I'm a power gamer. I'm also a painter. I'm also a lore junkie. I'm also a conversion fanatic, and it just checks all the boxes, right? So they're just awesome. We'll leave it at that
Nice.
from me.
Nice. That's well said. Well said. Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's probably
I think
about
that's
it.
probably it. Right?
That's a
Yeah.
good place to end.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for for having me, and
For sure.
you
It's a
know,
pleasure.
I know that
COVID
there's a
and stuff.
few.
Anybody
Pardon?
with COVID and stuff, we haven't
Oh
seen
yeah,
anybody
yeah, I know.
in a while.
It's been like half a year, it feels like.
Yeah.
But definitely, and if you guys are interested, like for the listeners, if they're interested in seeing, World Eaters, I think Armin, we played 2 games on your guys' channel, right? We played a Zone Mortalis game, which was really good for like the fluffy, just cinematic. It was a very cinematic game, and
Yep.
those who are more interested in like, okay, I want to see how armies compete at a top tier level, um, you know, that I think was a great game to look at for that. So 2 different extremes, but same army, right? And same people playing. You play Alpha Legion in both of them. I play World Eaters in both of them.
That's right. Well, and definitely, like if anybody wants to actually watch that zone game again, or watch it for the first time, if you haven't and you just listen to us, there's a couple of Easter eggs in there that we kind of set up that I never noticed, like nobody ever mentioned. So they're definitely still out there, hidden. And I mean, I don't want to say anything because if people actually want to go and check it out, you remember James? We were messing around, and yeah, so there's definitely a couple Easter eggs in there, guys. If you catch it, give us a message,
sure.
comment, message me directly.
We'll see if
whatever.
I could link those in the video in the comments.
Yeah, and
do it because I would almost like give something to somebody who finds those because
pretty subtle.
like, yeah, right. And I remember us having a lot of fun with it too. So
It was
worthwhile.
it was good, and I think there's one other game too that I'm playing on your guys' channel with the World Eaters, and that was against Bill, and I think I'm that one had some Russ versus Angron action. So if you're into Primarks, that one was a good one too. So
Yeah.
yeah, next time I come on, I'll be playing my Blood Angels. So
nice. Very nice.
But yeah, thanks so much for having me, you guys. I've enjoyed the chat, and
thanks for joining us, man. It's been a while, and it's good to see you're doing good and everything, and enjoying the hobby still. And I know we're still pumping away as well, and always
we'll
new
have
projects.
to get some games in soon.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, I think that'll be it. Thanks, guys, for listening. If you're checking us out on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, and we're on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play. Subscribe, like button, all that stuff. Follow us. Don't forget Instagram as well. We do a lot of pictures, and I think there's probably some pictures of your World Eaters, actually, James.
Yeah,
in there.
There is,
so
and I know that I'm a big fan of your guys' and on your page, and if anyone has any World Eater specific questions, by all means, right? Like shoot me a message. I if people are curious about what competitive World Eaters are like in particular, or even just competitive gaming, right? What the LVO and Adepticon is like at 30K. By all means, shoot me a message too.
perfect, exactly. Comments, message them directly, whichever. It's all down there. But again, thanks, guys, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.